mo tala feo ngore le ya matatu so ta inga fo I Hawaii le sunga Ken Aiono lo tau mai na vai ngol tatu ngarwenga pena masania so lo va yesterday tasi o no foi ya se fa fonga na tunu le ngata ya o te o ne so se tafora nei ke lope te leo vai ngolo o nei tupum te mali I o ala mata mafana o Samoa toro malo te leo America Ken ano fa te mal nei tau good morning also
malo fa te leo so te vai meni mali o le pesel na fai la su nga in salu po wa wana tan to su to sanga tan wai no wa le su isa mo e su pa tamilo po ai de tu na mau e fa ai na claiming ya le pesel da so ora ule ta wina to na tu su ai o le finga tal na o le pese o le pese e fa i foi o le si te ni o no foi o le si po a pitu foi no tango le tu fa te si mo te tonu e tu nanga fo I o le pese anyway fa taila va ma le tu o le winga na o pese si ta no system I al taone ya fa tano fa te le lo fo le tu ta to de me fo di taio I no na lo fam no na le ya fa ta fa fo I tamam tina ma tu la fa ya le tua lo na to fo lo fa fonga mai no pe na fa langi po fela po ta fon le kelo pe lo fa fonga mai ta to program ni sa wa tu mai United States of America ma po lo si le fi me sa tu pu me la tu pu fo ni nei va ya so wa fo le ma do la tu nu ta vai mo e va tu fo de fa tai ale ta to po kalambi e le sunga ya Dr. David na upu Matthew Paraita ya se tasi fo Samoa longa I Stone for California mo sa no fa tano inai o le professor po Dr. David na upu Matthew Paraita na moa na PhD ya ai o lo tayu nei le department po le department chair matanga su le interdisciplinary studies the City College of San Francisco. Say fear for the Bible that you know, yeah, na foi taulang tele California, but nei ho yet nu. Mawala na fai longa I umai na o nga mawalunga o Waipahu School te siwe wafitu. Mawala na PA, Bachelor of Arts in Cultural Geography, mai University of Washington, tau sanga luafe mai todo. Mawala na Masters of Arts Ethnic Studies. Malona fa ilongo PhD ya po the Doctor of Philosophy in Ethnic Studies mai University of California I Berkeley I California University of California sa hos si fiel mai le tinu se tasi fo I o uso ya po le wo pele fo I le filma ya sia te wi Doctor tu fa le va sa patrina yungo le tatu le jo sai mai fo I nei fo university Kolo faya nga nei Dr. David Palaita I le officer for Department Interdisciplinary Studies in the City College of San Francisco. Ya masili fo I o le nei university por kolisi sa pa tu ina te siva to lima mai tu sa malos ful pa te mai tia nga I po tanga ta onga o le oa onga I te tonu o le University of San Francisco. Ya ma ava tu fa ta falava I la sunga Dr. David na upu Matthew Palaita.
Yeah, malo lava soifua. Thank you so much for this opportunity to be on the infamous Radio Samoa network in New Zealand and in Hawaii. So thank you for the invitation, Dr. Aiono, and great to meet you, Mr. Tawai in New Zealand. Malo lava.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, malo fatai lava ile fa mno ino lu taimi yo na ole malo le tazo tunu ole la fa ngai de pe ia la fa ngai ngana tua pa Samoa po mali pa Britania smela bolo pingal ia tunu fo I Dr. David Matthew Paraita tala no mai pe sam no mai ai Dr. Paraita, can you talk a little bit about your background?
Thank you so much, Dr. Aiono. So I'm Dr. Palaita. I'm born and raised in Hawaii. My parents are both of Samoan ancestry. My mother is from the villages of Nu'uli in Pangpango in Kukuila, America, Samoa. And then my father is from Afongo and Ofu in Mangua. So very proud Manukan and very familiar with the sort of its history of the Kuimanguas, and their impact in the sort of wider range of the Pacific and Oceania. So my lineages are both in Tutuila. But I was also born and raised in Hawaii to a family of, I have a total of 8 siblings. And then my mother and my father are both, were raised in CCJS, local Fa'isa, probably commonly more known as local Poesi. These are one of the first founding churches when Samoans first migrated out of Tutuila after World War II into Honolulu in Hawaii. So Naituli, the late Naituli Malipe'ai was our whaife'au, along with other folks that were also, as the Samoan community was building in Hawaii during this time. So I am a sort of a product of that history of Samoans coming into the United States by way of Hawaii, just post-War II, World War II, right after, at the end of World War II in the Pacific.
Yeah. Very briefly, Bembo, sina minute, na whailau dissertation na mawailau PhD for Doctor of Philosophy. Basa, ocean, space that is sacred, Pacific Islanders in higher education. Inai whai upua se lua pe tolu, can you kind of summarize for la ale winga, la for any findings na mawa mai tau na mawa se le so na e oro whaponga mai I lau dissertation?
Yes. So a lot of my dissertation was inspired by the sort of inaccessibility of higher education to a broad community of Samoans in the Bay Area and in other United States cities like Seattle and Los Angeles. And so, I went into my graduate studies. What's interesting is that when I first started higher education at University of Washington, I had aspired to play football. This is a sort of common thread here in the States in which, many of our Pacific Islander, particularly Polynesian students, are sort of, encouraged and recruited and geared towards going into the university or going into higher education to be able to access the opportunities to play in not only in college football, but also in professional football, or what we have here in the United States as the National Football League. The three of us probably know very well, how small of the chances of any Polynesian, whether they're Samoan or Tongan or Fijian or Hawaiian, how difficult it is to secure a sort of, a job or a contract with the National Football League. And we're still seeing this sort of, not so much of a problem, but more of a challenge in which we're still encouraging our Samoan youth to avail of the sort of resources that come with, playing years of American football. I'll just use the phrase American football because football is, there's another term used in other cultures, but at least in the Pacific or in Oceania or New Zealand, American football is quite different from rugby. So when I started to get into my university studies, I noticed that there were very, very good recruitment resources. But what happens is when students come into the university system, they don't get a lot of support for them, in terms of academics. And so I've seen over the years that we get a lot of students who want to access academic resources, but a lot of that is geared towards just football. And in the United States, you kind of have to be able to do well in academics in order to continue playing in athletics. And so there's, what I call a cultural lapse in what the educational institutions can provide in order to support Samoan youth or Samoan students. So there's a lack of those resources in order to support their journey in through higher education. my dissertation focused on this word Vasa because this is what students, when I first began teaching at the University of Washington and also at University of California, Berkeley, at City College, the common thread amongst those students was that they did not see themselves in these educational institutions. A lot of this has to do with the way that race and racism operates within our institutions. Now, a lot of my PhD and my philosophical work and my studies was to tackle the understanding of how race and racism works in these educational institutions. It was not enough to say, let's build a program and then it's going to track all these islanders and then we resolve the issue of race and racism. What we found is that what might seem to be a racist policy on the surface, it's just that folks, there weren't Pacific Islanders or Samoans inside of the institution to help teach and guide, administrators about what policies to create and what things they need to do or what kinds of programs to develop. It's because there are very few of us in American education systems that not only go into education, a lot of them don't stay in education. So a lot of us probably are getting master's degrees or PhD degrees, but education is not the sort of end goal, right? I, on the other hand, decided to do my doctorate of philosophy with the intention to stay in education. And so I've been in higher education, already 20-plus years teaching and organizing and developing programs. And what I'm currently doing now is visiting different universities and talking about this framework we call VASA that's very much integrated or very much spelled out in the dissertation itself. And, you asked for three things that folks should know about this framework. Number one, it sounds like, VASA is a very familiar name. The Samoans use the term quite often, but it's actually two words that students decided to combine together to create the word. You have one word called Va, and, very much a lot of work of this is very grounded in the novelist, Samoan novelist Albert Wendt's work around Va, notions of relational space. The other word is Sa, or sacred, right? So when you put the two words together, it forms the word Vasa. And so this not only helps our students to sort of learn Samoan or learn, Pacific language, which is something that we've and I'll talk a little bit about this, later on the program in terms of many of the Samoan immersion language programs that are now, being built in San Francisco. But three things that students should get out of, the dissertation is, one, what is that word? Why have students developed a program, that centers, Vasa itself, the translation is ocean, or, the literal translation is the space that is sacred. Okay. So that's number one, right, is understanding why that framework for students is, something that helped to bind them, but also help them to successfully get through the educational system. The second thing I think students or folks that are listening on our program should know about VASA is that it's not a new idea. It's actually quite an ancient cultural idea. Because we live in an island environment, the ocean is always going to be a sort of central organizing entity. It continues to, we not only draw resources from this place, but it also shapes the kinds of things that we do. It shapes the cultures that we reside in and practice every day. I mean, most of the Pacific Islanders that live in island environments are going to always be shaped by this, natural entity we call the ocean, or VASA. Third, VASA as a program and as a framework is a possibility. It's an attempt to not only address some of the institutional racism and the barriers that exist in educational systems, but it's also an opportunity to allow our students to not only grow and thrive in educational systems, but it also gives an opportunity to also practice and, understand their cultures. So a lot of the students that come into our program are third, fourth generation students. Okay, go ahead, sorry.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah, because of our time, I know we're going to go in details more in our future programs. But today, I just wanted to thank you for coming on the radio. And but so my and I have like 10 other questions, but no, that thing was sola. Yeah, like to train me to fight. My is so long fight. Last thought. For end of our program today, Dr. David Matthew Paleta.
Final thoughts. Is that what you're asking, Dr. Aiono?
Yes. Yeah, Dr. Taylor. Yeah.
I'm sorry, from Mole, what was the question again?
Oh, no, just final thoughts to end our interview today. Yeah.
Okay. So final thoughts is, I want folks to understand, some of the work that, the city and county of San Francisco, California are doing in order to expand Samoan language immersion. So already in the school districts, there's a huge $1 million initiative to put more language programs. And so my dissertation, although it doesn't cover, the wide work that, the Samoan language programs that are being developed in San Francisco, it's very much connected. And so my final thoughts are really is that there is work to continue supporting third and fourth and newer generations of Samoans that are being born in the States. And so I really appreciate this time to have this conversation. Malo lava.
Malo fatay. Fatay lava Dr. David Naupu, Matthew Paleta, Montaigne Noah, Noai Manafsunga, Samoa, the my professor, my City College of San Francisco, Alabuina Fuano, Pano Yachunu, WLA, Ringo Samoa, Nifo Bang, Kilope, if we suppose I am a to own, I'm more timely,